Hello, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. And another memory I have, I was looking at some stuff I'd written down back in 1979, memories of houses that we had lived in, and part of those the memories go to Okinawa and the various maids that we had. I'd written the names of them, and it was like, wow, my memory was a lot more fresh back in 1979 than it is now. I had forgotten about some of these maids, but we ended up in a 5 year period having 8 different maids. And first one, we had moved to Kakaza Heights. We had just arrived on the island, and an Okinawan woman came by our house and visited. And my mother thought she was a neighbor. And then my brother had toy cars on the floor. She started picking them up, and my mother kind of put two and two together and asked her, "Are you looking for a job?" And my mother hired her on as our maid. She was with us for a while, and then my mother thought we were going to be moving on base, and my mother let her go because she thought we were going to be moving. We ended up not moving as soon as we thought we were going to, but then another woman came by our house, a second one, and was selling children's books, and somehow my mother brought her on as our maid. I'm not sure how all that worked out, but anyway, she spoke pretty good English. She's pretty good, and she left because I guess she didn't have anybody to watch her children. She had to start being home to watch her children. So that ended that, and then another maid came. This one I barely even remember anything about. I just heard that from my mother that her performance wasn't very good, and my mother let her go. She didn't last very long. Then we had the next maid, and this maid started at our house in Kakaza Heights and actually followed us to Rikon Plaza, and was our maid there. Then after a while, she just disappeared. She just stopped coming back. So in that time frame, my mother hired another maid, and finally, about 2 months later, that our old maid comes by with another maid, saying that she can't work for us anymore, but she said this woman will replace me. My mother said, "Well, I've already hired another maid, so we're not going to need the ones you're bringing." And it turned out the woman said she quit because she had to help her husband in her workshop. So the next maid we had, another one's unsatisfactory work according to my mother. She had made the beds, and one side of the bed, the covers were touching the floor, and there was a lot of other issues my mother had with her too. My mother let her go soon after. Then we had a next maid. One of our neighbors recommended that maid, so we brought her on. And every time a lot of times the maid would be cleaning our house, my mother would go off and do different things, run errands, go to the beauty shop, whatever. Anyway, when my mother wasn't home, the neighbor woman would see that the car wasn't there, so our Pontiac wasn't there, so she would come by the house and ask that maid to come to her house for a few hours and do work over there. Well, my mother found out about that and told that maid, to stop doing that, but she didn't stop doing it, so my mother let that maid go. Then we had another one, and she lasted a while, and then she left because her son had to have an operation, so that she was gone. Then our last maid was probably the best maid we had. She became our maid when we moved to Rikon Plaza, and she actually stayed with us all the way, and for like the two years we were there, all the way up until we left Okinawa. Her name was Toshiko. She was by far the best maid that we had. Spoke pretty good English and everything, and that's basically the history we had on the maids. Labor was a lot cheaper in Okinawa, and so it wasn't uncommon for Americans over there to have maids would come over for maybe like 1 or 2 days a week and do house cleaning. Sometimes they double up as babysitters watching the children, and other people also had yard men when they did the yard work. That was another thing. We had a yard man, and there was also women that were sew girls. I don't know if they do the some. I guess someone would do the sewing at their house. Someone would come by the house and sew stuff, make stuff that people would hire them for special projects. I don't believe my mother ever hired a sew girl, I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's the history on the Maids. I just happened to find something I'd written back then, and I now had not even remembered all these Maids. I would, especially their names. My memory was more fresh back then. We'd only been off the island for 3 years, and so it's interesting to read. And anyway, I thought I'd go ahead and talk about the various Maids we had on Okinawa, and I'm sure you all have like different memories as well of living there, and the various Maids that your family had. My mother was pretty much a perfectionist on the house being clean and everything. Some of these Maids were not up to my mother's standards, and that's why, some of them were let go. Anyway, looking for ideas on shows to do in the future, shows about preserving history, especially obscure aspects of history. With that being said, like, subscribe, share. As always, thanks for watching.